Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. If you're a government and you've been lying about something to the citizenry for almost 80 years, like how do you go about correcting that lie? Like by telling the truth? Like what do you have to do? What's the first step? How do you justify it? Like how do you justify that lie? These are some of the questions I am sure are running through the heads of the people within the control group. Some people within the, of course, that comprises, I believe, people within the Pentagon, as well as some defense contractors. These are some of the questions that they have to be thinking about. I find it interesting that that National Defense Authorization Act of 2024 was supposed to include the UAP Transparency Act, and it did not. It was gutted. A gutted version of it appeared in there, and then of course now there are politicians who are trying to pass it again, trying to include it in the National Defense Authorization Act for 2025, and now there's, of course, as we all heard recently, that's probably not going to happen again. So you have to wonder, like, why? Obviously, these people who are in control, who are controlling this secret, who are keeping the truth away from the public, are fighting this tooth and nail. That's what it tells me. And they're using the power that they have, which is campaign finance money, which they give to their to the puppets that they have in Congress to attempt to block this. At the same time, we do have a bipartisan group of different people within Congress, in the Senate and in the House, who want to tell the people the truth, who want to get to the bottom of this. And it's interesting that it hasn't passed yet, because you would think that if you're in the control group, I mean, that proposed legislation includes immunity for people who have been withholding things from withholding what they know about recovered alien crafts and alien bodies and reverse engineering programs from the Congress and the public. Those things. There are certain things that are in that legislation that would provide those people in this control group protection, but they're fighting against it. They don't want that bill to pass. They don't want that UAP Disclosure Act to be included in any National Defense Authorization Act. They want to just continue the way things have been continuing. They want people to forget about this. I mean, you have the Pentagon telling us over and over again. I just talked recently about some spokesperson who stood up at a podium and basically lied to the public again, when we all know that they're lying. We all know that they're lying to us at this point. I mean, anybody with a critical thinking brain at this juncture would have to know that they are lying to you. The Pentagon has been lying about this, and they continue to lie about it, and they do it all the time. They've been doing it, who knows, with countless times now, that when this subject has been brought up, a person from the Pentagon will tell us a lie. And it just happened again recently. It happens all the time. It's been happening for decades. And yet, we have people in Congress trying to attempt to pass this UAP transparency legislation, and they can't do it because you have these apparent people from the control group stopping it, preventing it from happening. The puppets who are preventing it are people who have received big-time campaign contributions from the military-industrial complex over the decades. So it doesn't take much of a genius to figure out what's going on here. And in addition, I don't understand why they're doing it, especially at this point, when they know that the jig is up. The jig is up. It's been up for a while now. I mean, there could have been arguments made in the past, despite all of the evidence that has been accumulated over the years, the physical trace evidence, the video, the pictures, all of that stuff, right? The countless number of people who have stepped forward, who said that they were abducted by aliens, who have been hypnotized, people who have had implants removed from them, the high number of incidents where these UFOs show up at schools and a whole bunch of school children see them, not just in the Ariel school incident from 1994, but the Westall school incident from 1966. And there's countless other ones like this. I mean, Preston Dennett had a show on this one time where he listed out like dozens of them. There's a whole bunch of different cases like this where UFOs and aliens are seen at schools for some reason. And yet we're still not being told the truth about it from the government. But the point is coming. There's going to be a day of reckoning, and it's coming. It's very close, closer than people realize, because there's going to be people demanding answers as time goes on because of the evidence that is out there now in the public domain. When people get a grasp of this, right, and they get a hold of it and they look at it and they absorb it, they're going to realize that they've been getting lied to about this and that the government is still continuing to lie about it, because we have evidence now that shows there is a non-human intelligent presence on this planet, as I've been talking about for months and months and months now. Right? We have that evidence. The Pentagon is aware of this evidence, and they are aware that this evidence is out there. Debunkers can't debunk it. They won't touch it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to acknowledge that it exists. Right? They just want to pretend it's not there. They want to pretend that it means nothing, although they will not try to scientifically refute it. So at some point here in the near future, as time goes on and more people learn about this, right, this is how it's going to go. Over time, the internet's going to keep spreading this word out there, and more people are going to see it, and they're going to know that it's real. And that means then people are going to have lots of questions for the governments of the world, including elected officials are going to be wondering, hey, there's something here, and don't you know about this? There's going to be a lot of questions like that. People are going to be saying, there was a case here in Vegas in 2023 where aliens, apparent non-human intelligent beings, showed up in a family's backyard, and there's video evidence to go along with it. Police were involved. 911 calls were made. People in 4 states saw the object falling down from the sky. What do you know about this? And that at that point, the Pentagon's going to have to make a decision on how do they approach this. What do they say? Do they double down on the lies? Do they pretend, for instance, that this is the first time they ever knew about anything like this? That's one of the avenues you got to think about, because at some point they're going to have to address this, right? Despite what anybody else out there in the UFO community or anybody else out there in the UFO debunker world will tell you, right? At some point, the Pentagon's going to have to address the Las Vegas alien video. And I'm so sick of talking about it, to be quite honest with you, but it's the best evidence we ever have, and it actually proves undoubtedly that we're not alone. But at some point, the Pentagon's going to have to address this. And what do? Do they just say, "Hey, we never encountered anything like this before. This is a first for us"? Do they take that route, or do they finally admit to the truth that they knew about this for decades and that they have recovered craft, just like a lot of whistleblowers have been telling us, like David Grush, like Lou Elizondo, among others, right? Or do they just continue, or do they do nothing? I don't think they're going to be in a situation where they can just do nothing, because there's going to be an outcry. The outcry is going to get louder and louder and louder as time goes on. At some point, some smart person in the mainstream media is going to latch on to this, and they're going to try to do something with it. They're going to alert to the world to this story. If somebody sits down and tries to understand the situation that happened there, they're going to realize, wow, okay, this is a real thing, and we need to get some answers on this. And then they're going to make big stories about it. I mean, you might see something in the New York Times at some point, but believe it or not, they in fact, think about it, they're the ones who initially published that story from Ralph Blumenthal and Leslie Kean back in 2017 with regard to the leaked Pentagon videos. So at some point, someone's going to catch on to this, and something's going to be done about it, and then the Pentagon is going to be forced to come clean, and that's the thing. How are they going to come clean? That's the big question. Nobody knows the answer to that, but they're going to have to do something. My feeling is that they should just come out and just lay it all out. Just tell the whole truth. I mean, of course, there needs to be some things that need to remain classified, right? I would say that, anything that the government has learned with regard to reverse engineering these crafts, I mean, that you can't release that kind of information. You could give just a basic overview on what you learned about these craft and how they operate, and what is their how does their propulsion system work in these craft. You could talk about that. You could talk about the physiology of the recovered creatures. I mean, are they insectoid, a lot of these creatures, like a lot of people believe, or are they something else? There's things like that they could share. They could share information with regard to the Roswell crash, finally. I mean, anybody who researches the Roswell incident, for instance, would know that there are just too many witnesses. There were too many witnesses involved, all of them telling different little pieces of that story. All of them had a little piece of that story to share, and when you put all those pieces together, it was like putting a puzzle together. And you see, yes, there was most certainly something that crashed there. There were people that were in the United States Army Air Forces that had to pick up the pieces. They had to pick up the bodies. They had to cover it up. They were told not to say anything about it. It's not just Jesse Marcel Sr. There's a whole cavalcade of different folks who were interviewed or gave deathbed read confessions over the years that informs us that incident really happened, and because it was probably the first thing that happened. It was probably the first crash. I mean, I'm not sure. I know some people will say 1941 Cape Girardeau, Missouri. There's just not a lot of evidence for that. You have one witness, basically, one second-hand account, or third-hand account, you should say. You really don't got much in some of these other cases. I think 1947 was when it truly started, and and based on the number of people that actually talked about it years later, obviously there was nothing. The government, the United States government, had no sort of program in place where they had people who handled these things and people who knew how to keep their mouth shut. No, that's not how that worked. That's why this Roswell story leaked after so much time had passed. I mean, you started with Jesse Marcel Sr. in the late 1970s, and then after that, it was a snowball effect, and you have all these other people talking about it, telling their wives before they died, telling their family before they died. Some of them actually talking to researchers like Kevin Randall, Donald Schmidt, or Thomas Carey, and relaying what they experienced back then. You had people talking about the threats they had received from people within the United States government, telling them to shut up or else they're going to be killed. So there were just too many people involved. So are they going to finally, at some point, when they do finally tell the truth, are they going to tell the truth about some of these famous crashes like Roswell, or are they just going to acknowledge that there's something here and that they knew nothing about it before until just recently? Oh yeah, we were in the dark just as much as you were, and now we see that there is something here, and that there must be something to it, but we don't know much more about it than that. Like, that's going to be that has to be one of the things going on in their heads right now. I think it would be stupid to do that, because then you're just creating another kind of a lie. I mean, I think what you do, you just come right out and you just tell the truth. And there would be justification for it, right? I mean, I understand, a lot of people would understand 1947 into the 1950s, you could understand why something like this needed to be kept a secret from the world, because there could have been some sort of a panic because of this. At this juncture now, right, I don't think that's the case. I don't think anybody's going to panic. I've seen it firsthand, actually. I presented in this evidence that has reared its head to people who did not believe in this, and they're okay with it. And I think that's going to be the reaction for a lot of people. There might be some people who are going to freak out a little bit, but we'll live with it, just like with everything else. You learn to live with it. There's scary things that we learn about in life, but then we were able to move on. I think that the government needs to tell the truth about this, and another aspect to this truth is that they probably have no idea totally what the intentions of these beings are. I mean, I don't see how they could know, even after all this time. I just don't see how you could know anything, really. They might know something, but they can never be absolutely sure. They're just not going to be sure. I don't know how anybody could be sure. I know there's a lot of people in the UFO community that they know all about them, and they know all the different species and all that kind of stuff. I just don't know how that's possible. I just don't see how it's possible. But anyway, with all of this in mind, I did. I wanted to find out what ChatGPT thought of all of this, and so I asked ChatGPT a question today about this, and I wanted to know, how would the government justify lying? How would they justify lying to the public about this for all these years? We'll talk about what I'll show you what ChatGPT saying about this, and we'll talk about it. Anyway, the exact question that I asked was, exactly how would the United States federal government justify lying to the American public for nearly 80 years about the reality that there is an extraterrestrial presence on Earth, and that the government has retrieved crashed UFOs and alien bodies, and have for years been attempting to reverse engineer recovered UFOs? And then this was the response from ChatGPT. It says, the idea that the United States federal government has concealed information about extraterrestrial life, crashed UFOs, and reverse engineering efforts is a popular topic in conspiracy theories and speculative discussions. If such a situation were to occur, potential justifications from a government perspective might include, and it has 6 different things here, 6 different bullet points. Number 1, national security. Officials might argue that disclosing the existence of extraterrestrial technology or life could pose a national security threat. They might claim that revealing this information could lead to panic, undermine public trust, or provide adversaries with strategic advantages. Okay. Now, I agree with that to an extent, that number 1. because that's just like what I was just saying before. I mean, you could understand initially why this was covered up, but I think what happened is they covered it up and they were hoping to come to a point where they would be able to make a announcement, and that point never arrived, and the decades just continued to go by, and they continue to go by, and they still continue to go by, and they still haven't really done much. I mean, we have seen some movement in the last few years, but we're really nowhere. We really haven't gotten to that point we need to get to still. We're still not there. But you can understand, yeah, at that time, in a way, it would be a national security threat because you would have some people panicking. And yeah, people, people wouldn't, the public trust would be undermined. People would not feel safe, especially back in the 40s and the 50s, right? Maybe even into the 60s. I just think that we waited way too long. And they're talking here also, it would provide adversaries with strategic advantages. Really, how? If you don't really talk about, the craft and how they operate, you don't get into the nitty gritty of it, but, how is that going to provide any strategic advantage to any of our rival countries out there? Because everybody, once our government tells the truth, then the whole world's going to know about it. I mean, of course, there might be some governments like Russia that will just lie to their people and say, no, that's not true. They're just, Americans are making it up, something to that effect. But for the most part, the rest of the world's going to know the truth. So I don't know what that, I don't agree with that totally. Okay, the second one is number 2, public safety. The government could assert that the public is not psychologically or socially prepared for the implications of extraterrestrial contact, fearing it could cause widespread anxiety or unrest. Yes, again, I agree with this one to a degree, but I think that we're way beyond that now. I mean, back in 1947, I mean, you weren't that far. You're only 9 years after the famous Orson Welles' War of the Worlds broadcast. But things have changed since 1947, very much so. And I think people are ready about this right now. They just want to know the truth. You hear people talking about it all the time. People, talk show hosts at night, TV channels, news outlets are talking about, hey, is there anything? They always ask people in the government, hey, do you know anything about aliens or UFOs? Because people want to know, and they want to know. Just all these people like on these talk shows at night that ask politicians questions about UFOs, they want to know too, just like we want to know. Everyone wants to know the truth already, but the government won't provide that truth. They just, smirk and smile, and they say, I wish we knew more, or I can't really say much about this. You get stuff like that. But I think at this point, I don't think you need to worry too much about panic anymore. I think we're well beyond that. I think the human race has grown up somewhat with regard to how it would react to learn that we are not alone in this world. All right, number 3. Scientific control. There might be an argument for managing scientific exploration and understanding of extraterrestrial phenomena to ensure it is conducted safely and responsibly, rather than allowing unregulated speculation or exploitation. Well, the unregulated speculation, I mean, we're already having unregulated speculation. I'm speculating here on a regular basis, and of course, I'm not a scientist, but there are scientists out there who are speculating. But the exploitation aspect of this, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, yeah, of course. You don't want someone out there studying this, some scientists studying this on their own, studying a recovered UFO, for instance, studying on their own without the government knowing about it, right? You don't want that to happen, because then they could exploit it for a wrong purpose. That'd be something to be worried about. And you can understand, so that's why they would want to keep this covered up, but that's we all know that. I mean, you got to keep the reverse engineering stuff. You got to keep that stuff classified, but you got to acknowledge the reality that we're not alone, and give the world something. Tell us what you do know. Give us more than what you've been telling us instead of these lies. You got to admit to it already. It's going to be a tough job for whoever ends up having to do this, but that job that job needs to be filled, because someone's going to have to do it at some point. It's coming. Okay, number 4, political consequences. Disclosure could have profound political ramifications, including destabilizing existing power structures or complicating international relations. Officials might believe that a gradual or controlled release of information would be more manageable. I believe that's what we're seeing right now. This is, it could be, that's what it seems like. It's sometimes it seems like that. Seems like we're having this slow disclosure. That's what I feel like sometimes. And I feel like some of the people in the UFO community who are outspoken, they actually might be part of that slow disclosure. And this is all some giant plot because we're too stupid to take it all in one shot. That's what they think. They look at the rest of them, right? They're smart enough to deal with it, right? But they don't feel like the rest of us. They look at the rest of us like, oh, they're a bunch of dummies. They can't deal with the whole truth right now. So we'll just spoon feed it to them, just like I was talking about the other day. So that some of these people, they think they're better than everybody else, and that drives me crazy. That drives me nuts, and it really pisses me off. So that could be a possibility. Even some of the people, some of the big names in the UFO community, they could be all part of this scheme, or this slow disclosure scheme. I mean, the government back in 2017 realized, oh, we got to get the truth out there. I mean, everybody has a cell phone now. It's only a matter of time before they figure this out. So we need to do this slow disclosure. So we'll start this process. We'll create this phony friction between the Pentagon and all these other UFO whistleblowers fighting all the time just to keep it in the news, to keep the news cycle rolling. We'll have these couple of debunkers in on the game too. They'll just keep saying bad stuff because that's the only thing humans understand, fighting between people. And they'll keep their attention. That's what it could be. You ever think of that? I have. I usually don't bring it up, but I do think of stuff like that. But they think that the rest of us are a bunch of dummies, and they just couldn't deal with knowing the reality of the situation all in one shot. Even though a lot of us have pretty much figured it out. Probably some of us have figured it out a lot more than some of these bozos have too. Okay, number 5. Preservation of institutions. Maintaining the credibility of government institutions and the scientific community could be seen as essential, leading to a reluctance to reveal information that could undermine public trust in these entities. Well, you know what? The fact that you have people in Congress pushing for this because they don't know anything, I think that the institutions, with regard to our elected officials, I think that they're going to be looked at as heroes in the end of this, and maybe that's all part of the setup too, right? In order to maintain the credibility of these institutions, they have to pretend that they don't know anything about it too, and they're outraged too, and they're gonna try to get this UAP Disclosure Act passed and adopted. So then, because they want to get to the bottom of it too, and they don't want to be dragged down with the rest of the people who've been keeping this a secret for a long time. So yeah. But you know what? Again, if you come out, people will understand. I think I would understand. I do understand how this started. I understand that the people responsible for starting this cover-up, they're dead. They're long dead. And even the people after them, they're probably dead too. There's probably nobody left who was part of the cover-up in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and 70s, maybe even into the 80s. There might not be any of those people left. The people that were there now were brought in later on. So they were already brought into something that a monster that was created back in 1947. So is it really their fault that they were brought into something that was turned into this monster that was started by people who are dead now? So I just don't know. I just think that a lot of people are going to understand. I think a lot of people in the UFO community are going to understand. I understand how it started. I just don't understand why we're still continuing to play this game. Like, I don't like this. I don't like the idea of being treated like a moron by the government when I know that they're lying. When that I can't remember what his name was, Pat something, the one representative from the Pentagon recently, I did a show about it. I don't know who, I can't remember his name off the top of my head here, but you know, I'm looking at him and he's just out there. He's just lying again. It's just, you know, telling some more lies. It insults my intelligence. My intelligence is insulted. Everyone's intelligence should be insulted who knows that they're lying. And I'm just tired of it. So they need to come out and they need to stop lying. For one thing, they need to stop lying. I mean, instead of just coming out and saying, you're better off just saying no comment and then moving on, rather than come out and saying, yeah, we have no evidence, right? Because that's a lie. We all know it too. We all know it, and we're sick of it. All right, number 6. Historical precedents. The government could reference historical instances where withholding information was deemed necessary for the greater good, framing it as a decision made in the interest of protecting the nation. All right, that's like, say you're a caveman and there's some saber-toothed tiger outside the cave that's, a whole clan of them out there, and they're going to eat you and your whole family the second you step out. And there's nothing you can do about it. You're gonna so the leader goes in and tells his wife and kids, "Hey, sorry, there's nothing to worry about." Even though he knows that there's hungry, hungry, savage animals waiting right outside the cave that's going to eat them alive, and he doesn't tell them about it because he doesn't want to, he doesn't want them to be worried. But then eventually they're going to get eaten alive anyway. Is that what's going on? Is that the nice kind of scenario we're dealing with here? I don't like, you see that in movies a lot, where somebody knows something really bad, especially older movies, like older science fiction movies or older monster movies. Somebody knows something really bad is going on, but they don't tell the people around them because they don't want to scare them. Well, you should be telling the people around them so they're aware of what the hell's going on. Right? That's stupid. And it's actually, to me, it's selfish. It's actually selfish. You think you're doing a good thing. No, you're not. You should tell people want to know what the hell's what's going on and what potentially could happen. And that's, again, you're treating people like morons, like idiots, like they can't handle the truth. And it's just not right. It's not right. And of course, like I've talked about the reasons that I think that this needs to be discussed and it needs to be ended, this whole cover up. The reason it needs to end, the reason the cover-up needs to come to an end, this moratorium on truth needs to come to a conclusion, is because for two biggest reasons that I think. I mean, the fact that the scientific community as a whole doesn't take this seriously, that's a crime right there. And secondly, all of these people, and actually this is probably more important to me, all those people that have been ridiculed throughout the years, when the reality is that they were telling the truth, but yet they got ridiculed because the government pretended like they knew nothing about it. That has to come to an end. That needs to stop. We need to bring this to an end. And you bring up, you explain why you've been lying, and you tell us what you can tell us, right, for the time being, and then we all move on. That's how it needs to happen. It needs to happen. Anyway, then it finally says here, these justifications, while speculative, illustrate the complexities involved in the hypothetical scenario of government secrecy about extraterrestrial matters. The actual situation, if it exists, would likely be far more nuanced and multifaceted. It does exist, despite what ChatGPT says here. It does exist. There's a situation, and there are things going on behind the scenes that a lot of us out there, we just don't understand fully. We don't understand what these beings are up to for the most part. We don't understand all of the reasons for the cover-up. We don't understand the reasons why they continue this way. Are we just? Is this their plan? Is this for the last 7 years? Is this some part of some slow disclosure plan? And there are all these different players are just all part of it and in on it, or at least some of them. And it's just to keep the attention there on UFOs. I mean, look at all the UFO stories and that you find on the internet on a regular basis on different, a lot of mainstream outlets, but a lot of smaller news outlets. But as a constant basis, there are constant stories about the UFOs, about UFO cover-ups, about whistleblowers, about the government, about it's a constant thing. We've been getting a constant churning of information for the past 7 years now, ever since the leaked Pentagon videos. Before that, we didn't have that, but now we do, and people are talking about it. They're talking about it all the time, and they keep saying that the government's. You have one side saying the government's lying to you. There's reverse engineering and crash retrieval programs and alien biologics that have been recovered, and the government's not telling you the truth. And you have the government saying no, they're crazy. They're all lying. It's a cult. Blah blah blah. So you have these two sides fighting. Is that just to keep it in the news? And all this is just theater? Or is that what's going on? It's a one big giant theatrical presentation put together. Is that what's happening? A lot of questions, no answers when it comes to this subject, folks. But one thing I do know is that we already have the absolute proof on our side at this juncture, and it's not going to go away ever. And anyone who sees it, and anyone who sits down and takes all of that information in and absorbs it, reads about it, watches all the videos, and sees with their own eyeballs, or does their own research, do your own research on it, right? You will see, right, that there's no going back. That it's over, it's been over, and the Pentagon is going to be forced soon to say something about this and to admit to the truth. They're going to have to. There's no choice anymore, right? The election's over tomorrow, right? The president, everyone's focused on the election. When all of that stuff starts dying down, right? When it's all over with, then this is going to pick back up again. People are going to start wanting to think about other things, right? And one of those things they're going to start thinking about is this whole UFO situation. And more people are going to find out about that Vegas case from last year and come to the understanding that it involved real non-human intelligent creatures running around in that backyard. And there's no other explanation for it. Anyway, I want to say this. I want to say thank you all for joining me today. Until next time.